So, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good middle of the night, wherever in the world you're dialing in from. If you're here for our webinar on where language meets culture. My name is Christian Höferle, and with me today is my lovely co-conspirator and my sister in arms, so to say, Micah. Well, and Micah, I really struggled pronouncing your name properly, so I'm going to let you do that.
Le français, c'est Bellieu. Bellieu.
Bellieu. Well, bonjour, bonsoir, bon après-midi à toutes les visiteurs. And welcome to Where Language Meets Culture. We will be starting the session in a second. However, I do want to invite you to listen to some housekeeping while you can see us, while you can see me battling the beautiful sun glaring into my window, and while you can see Micah over in her office space in Texas. We cannot see you during this session. So in order for us to interact with you, it would be lovely if you shared with us in the chat box where you're dialing in from. Some of you have already taken that clue. Thank you for sharing all of this. Big shout out to this global community. I love it. This is a really, truly international audience. This is what we've always been going for. So this is excellent. I love this. Now we have another tool for you to interact with us. That is the Q&A box. So if you found the chat box, then you probably also passed the Q&A box. That is the interface that you would like to use, hopefully, to ask us questions. So talk amongst yourselves in the chat and direct the questions at Micah and myself via the Q&A, and we will address them towards the end of the session. And if they're super pressing, because we recognize, we got to talk about this right now, then we'll pick it up immediately. One of us will always have an eye on that. So thanks everybody for tuning in. So we have people from the North Georgia mountains, from Cypress, Texas. Never been there. Interesting. From the UK, we have people from India. Wow, beautiful. We have people from California, from Germany, from Brazil. Oh boy, bom dia. I guess it's still bom dia time. We have people joining us from Cairo. Assalamu alaikum. We have people from Texas, from, oh my gosh, from a lot of Texans here. Estonia.
Yes.
Man, this is excellent. Well,
might be representing with the Texas crowd.
Well, we have Africa represented, Accra and Ghana. Excellent. Africa,
Great.
West Africa in the house. Slovakia. Well, this is a truly international group. Love it. All right, so we're here today to talk about the mission critical intersection between language and culture, and we think it's mission critical because this is where the magic happens in business, across cultures and across political borders. It's not only the culture, it's not only the language. One begets the other. They're kind of siblings that will never move out of each other's rooms. They live together until the end of times. So if you don't get language and culture, eventually culture and language will bite you in the rear. That's why we're here today. Language and culture are part of the same organism. And in our work together, Micah and I have learned how that intersection sometimes can lead people to make the wrong turn. So in order to give you a clear view of who we are, we invited people from our remote circles, or our respective remote circles. So there are some people that know Micah and who don't know me, and there's a lot of people who know me and don't know Micah. So Micah, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what it is you and your company do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Micah Bellieu, the non-French way of saying it. And I am the founder and CEO of Fluency Corp. We started in about 2009 after I had spent many years in formal language classes and just wasn't getting the results I wanted. And so really dove into second language acquisition and how does it happen? And how does it happen successfully? And so through that, I started getting contracts with Samsung and American Airlines for doing language acquisition. And about, 12 years later, we work with Fortune 1000 companies across the globe and also working with relocation companies. So when Chevron moves families, 4 people, 5 people, 6 people to a new country, the family needs to be able to manage in that country, and we get them fluent anywhere in the world.
Hence the name Fluency. I love it.
Mhm.
Thank you for that introduction. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Christian. The last name may give it away. I'm not a native to this country, and this country being the United States. I'm originally from Germany, and I am the founder and proprietor, CEO, some might say, which is a loaded acronym, I think, these days. I'm the founder of The Culture Mastery. We are a training and consulting firm helping similar clients as Micah's company is serving. We're serving multinational organizations to get their people culture ready, because it's, as you'll find out, it's not the company that's going global, it's the people inside the organization who need to be ready for this. And we're checking in with them to see how ready they are. And we're checking in with you to see what is maybe some of the stuff that's bugging you right now. So we want to hear from you what may be your biggest challenge right now around the topics of foreign language skills and or cultural competency. So you can write your challenges in the chat box. You can also use the Q&A for this. I'd rather you use the Q&A. That would make it easier for us in the rundown to follow up with you. And if you don't feel like you're here in a space where you can openly talk about your challenges because you may show a vulnerability of your own organization that you don't want to be known publicly, that is perfectly all right. Towards the end of our session, we'll give you our contact information, Micah's email and phone, and as well as mine, our direct lines, how you can get a hold of us directly. We're here to serve you. We're here not because we want to look pretty and sit in the sunlight and show us our awesome slides, which of course we do want to do that as well. We're here in service of you. So we want to find out what could it possibly be that you're struggling with right now, whether it's for yourself or some of your teammates in your organization. All right. So as I said in the beginning, if you don't get culture, if you don't get language, eventually they will get you. And this is not a threat. It sounds a little bit like mommy's talking or the teacher's talking. And I actually stole this line from my daughter's English teacher. Her AP English teacher told her, if you guys don't get language, it will get you. And I love this so much because it is often an afterthought. The services that Micah and I provide are often viewed, especially in corporations, as, yeah, that's nice to do and to have maybe when we get to it. And yeah,
It's so true.
maybe we don't have the budget carved out for this right now. Well, and let's talk about it. I mean, Micah, how does this happen with your clients? When they finally come to you, how many times have they fallen on their faces before?
It is a last, I don't even know the idiom for my own country. It's that last throwing of the football. What is that? Somebody will know
The
it.
Hail Mary.
But thank you. I don't know anything about football. It's a Hail Mary. It really is. They are just in so much pain at that point that they're just like, what else can it be? But it really cracks me up. I'm pretty blunt with my clients, which I think is why they enjoy getting, the true and honest answers. But one time there was a company coming in from Europe, and they said, oh, we have a foreman. He's going to be over 10 Americans, and his level is very, very low. And I said, oh, well, let's get him up to speed really quickly. Maybe let's do 5 to 10 hours a week. And they said, yes, you're right. He can't speak to the Americans, and that would be lovely to do that, but he doesn't have the time for that. And I said, he doesn't have the time to be able to speak to them? What is he doing? He can't speak to them.
What else
He
are you
can't do his
doing all day?
job. Yeah. And so they did not end up doing the language training because he didn't have the time, but yet he couldn't speak to them. Yeah, it's amazing.
Or he continued to assume, I guess, that everybody will default and bend to the language that he's comfortable in, right?
Or they do the best they can, which
right.
is, you're losing money and time that way. You're going to lose it somewhere. Yeah.
And the same is true for cultural competency. We do it when we have
Yes.
time. We will, we're here to bring people up to speed how we do the work, because that's why we're investing in this foreign market, because our skill set in producing this widget, this item, or providing this service has proven in our native market to be so good. So it will be just as good in this foreign market. So the people who
Will
work for us,
translate so
yeah,
smoothly.
it will easily translate into that market, and nothing could be further from the truth. So our question to you is, or our question to the marketplace is, if you think you're global, and forgive me for being blunt here, people, you might think that you are in fact a global organization. Chances are you are an international company, and here's why I think there's a difference. An international company is one that expands into foreign markets with lots of subsidiaries, and oftentimes local leadership in the subsidiary plants or facilities, offices, are still have strong ties to the home office. They have still strong ties to the culture and to the language of the country of origin of that specific company. A truly global company has understood that at some point they want to promote local talent up into leadership ranks and let the locals lead the local subsidiaries. That, I think, is the critical differentiator between a international company and a global company. And if you're going global, if you claim to be, whether you're still on the path to becoming global or not, if you're doing business internationally, how global ready are your people? How well do they work on their foreign language skills, and how much do they actually know about the culture in which they operate? This is the question we're confronting you with today. And I know that some of you on this call, some of you are working in a similar field as Micah and I are. So to a certain degree, we might be preaching to the choir here a little bit. But I also know that there's quite a few of you on here who are in the corporate world, who do recognize this as a potential weakness of your organization. Now, Micah, tell us a little bit about how language intelligence matters for an organization. Where does this actually hit the bottom line?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I love how you explained the difference between global and international. And I think it's so true. When I first started doing this, I had a brand new client from Spain, and they were just starting out in the US. Texas was their very first project that they had bid on and they had done well with. And I've kind of watched this company, and it's been my, this is how it should always be, because they've done it so beautifully and so seamlessly. But they have gotten a language instructor private for the 70% Americans that they have brought on board. They've given Spanish classes because the company's from Spain. No one ever does this. It was incredible to watch the Americans understand where the CEO truly came from as they learned the culture and the language. But year after year, they didn't make this a tiny little project. They made this a part of the whole culture of the organization. So the Spaniards got English lessons from Texans, and the Americans got Spanish lessons from Spaniards. And they have expanded to 20 other projects in the US in less than 7 years. They're doing the new Denver airport. They're the ones that got the project, you know? And
So it
and so I've
translated
just,
into ka-ching.
yes,
That's what you're saying,
it
right?
translated into major ka-ching. And I've talked to the leadership there, and they say they do the exact same thing in China, in the UK, in Brazil, in Argentina. They have this strategy. And it's just like you said. I mean, they truly go global. They dig in deep and they become a part of that community. And so that's that language intelligence, is knowing deeply the other person, and not just, like Patricia said, one of the panelists said, one of the attendees said, it's not just words. It's not. It's so much more than that. It's where are they coming from? And that's when this little line here, that connection happens. And that's where magic in business happens. Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about language competency or foreign language skills, what are the steps to developing that in an organization that your organization would suggest to clients? How when clients come to you for the first time and say, we know we got a blind spot here, we know we need to brush up on this. What is a typical course of action that you would suggest?
Absolutely. So a major airlines came to us and said, we have 85% of our workforce that is Spanish speaking, and we really want to pay tribute to that. We want to understand that. We want to respect that a huge part of our workforce is not American born or native English speakers. And so what I said to them is, maybe you can't get 50,000 people fluent in Spanish. I'm not going to suggest something crazy, unrealistic, because it does take a long time to go from zero to fluent. And that wasn't even really what their goal was. But what they did is everyone had language classes for 1 year and really had a goal. And the goal was to be able to connect on a deeper level with each one of those employees, asking about family, asking about how long have you worked here, and understanding what was important based on what country they came from, what values they held. And so it was more than language, yes, even
Yes.
though, yes, they wanted to have a conversation in Spanish, check, and they were able to do that. But it was to create a family at work.
I love this. I love this because this goes hand in hand with well, what we call cultural intelligence, right? That's why we're doing this together, because one without the other is like standing only on one foot. So when we talk to our clients about developing this cultural piece of their competencies within their organizations, first of all, I often get a term thrown at us that is, and I really dislike uttering it here in this format. It is soft skills training. That's what clients ask for or think this is the basket that it falls into. And I often get the hair in my back stands up and the hair on my arms like, soft as in what? What do you mean by soft? As in not as relevant as hard, or not as durable as hard skills? And so what are the hard skills in comparison to being linguistically competent and culturally competent in order to actually achieve your goals in your foreign markets? So how would any of this be soft, right? So these are that's why we said this is mission critical stuff. If you fail to communicate effectively and efficiently with your team members, with your clients, with your prospects, with your supply chain in any foreign culture, in any foreign language, then chances are you're not doing your job. You're failing. You're not going to reach the goals and objectives that your organization is setting in those markets. So why some people might regale our skills or our training initiatives as catering to soft skills is really beyond me. I understand why this is a term that's been thrown around for decades now. I've made it my life's mission to challenge that. So what are some of the aspects when we talk about cultural competence or cultural intelligence? So this is the CQ model based on the work of David Livermore. So want to give credit to whom credit is due, who basically divided up the process of acquiring cultural intelligence in these 4 steps. First of all, you want to have an intrinsic internal drive to do that. You have a desire, there is a reason why you want to be better at adapting to multicultural situations. Well, great. That's where you start. That gets you going, drives you from the point of cultural incompetence to more cultural competence. And you do this by acquiring knowledge. You learn about other cultures. And initially, a lot of people learn about the do's and don'ts, which is often, unfortunately, where that stops. And we tell our clients do's and don'ts are nice. They're lovely tidbits of data and trivia that you can memorize if you want to. And I'm sure there are tons of apps that you can use to download that. And help you with the do's and don'ts, they rarely really help you understand the reasons behind behaviors that are foreign to you. So I often say, well, there's the do's and don'ts, that's the surface level, and underneath the surface, that's where the why of these behaviors live. And unless you understand the why, and unless you have a deeper knowledge of what drives human behavior in different cultures, then it'll be hard to accept the fact that these do's and don'ts don't always match up with your preferences. So you can memorize do's and don'ts and you can still not like them, but if you understand why they happen, it might be easier for you to come to terms with that. And somebody is asking, what's the name of the author of the CQ model? It's a gentleman by the name of David Livermore. And I'm going to ask, well, I'm going to type it in the chat box later. So CQ strategy, that's the next step. So you apply your knowledge, or well, you plan to apply your knowledge. So you develop in an organization, how we're going to use this information. What does this mean for our processes? Who do we need to put in critical positions? Who gets to be the face of that interaction? Who has the deepest understanding of this culture, or who has the language skills to accompany that? So you make strategic decisions for your company, for your organization. And then finally in CQ action, this is where the rubber meets the road. You apply your knowledge and you put your strategy into action, and you test your ability to adapt and relate. And as you do that, you'll usually be driven to continue on that flywheel, because you will recognize that as you put your strategy into action, whether it be cultural intelligence, and I would argue to a certain degree language intelligence, you will find out that there are still some blind spots that you weren't even aware of in the beginning, and that will drive you to fill in those gaps. It's almost like a perpetuum mobile to get you going on a continuous path of learning. However, I do not want to steal from your thunder, Micah, because I do recognize that there are some linguistic models that you teach your clients that interact with those models that we teach our cultural clients. So one was the level of directness in communication, and we advertised this session with the example of the Texans and the Mexicans and the Spaniards. You want to tell us a story about what happened there with your clients?
Yes, there are a couple stories here that I've heard over the last decade, and one of them, of course, was going back to that Spanish company that we've worked so closely with, doing a lot of consulting on just how they can communicate better, the Texans and the Spaniards. I remember the HR woman telling me that she was a little scared the first few months working at the Spanish company because she felt they were yelling at her. And she figured it out by herself, because I didn't meet her till years later. But it would have been nice for her to not have had to figure that out by herself, right? To kind of have more of a, this is how it will be working at this company. And the same thing, a couple of years ago, a Texas company suddenly, very suddenly, had to be answering to the financial branch in Mexico for all their transactions. And it was the same thing. The Texans were, let's get it done yesterday, according to the Mexicans. And the Mexicans were like, why are they being so rude? They hate us. Exactly. Which is hard to get work done, right?
That might be difficult, right? And I think it also it shows that what we view as directness or any form of communication really always depends on our position, on our vantage point. So if Texans think that Spaniards are direct, then they think that from their vantage point of being Texans, right? So and then the Texans meet the Germans and the Russians, and they recognize that the Spaniards weren't all that direct after all. However, then there's this common language, right? Mexicans speak Spanish, Spaniards speak Spanish. Sure, it's a significantly different style of Spanish. I'm not going to question that. For a lot of non-Spanish speakers, that differentiation isn't always in their central awareness. Let's put it that way.
In their scope of understanding. understanding. Yeah,
Right.
they
So
have.
for a lot of especially English speakers, Spanish is Spanish, and they don't necessarily recognize that difference where it's from. So, but they will recognize after a while that Mexicans are a lot less direct than the Spaniards are, and they thought that in their experience of dealing with Spaniards that I can be as direct or as straightforward with any Spanish speakers based on my experience that I had with people from Spain. And they will quickly learn that this does not work very well in Mexico or in Guatemala or in Colombia for that matter, right? So levels of directness are not always an expression or a function of the language in itself. It is often a function of language in combination with culture. And as we look at directness levels, I found that as a German, I found that to be one of my biggest challenges in my early career, was that I was told in cultural training that Germans are, yes, that we are quite direct, but Americans can handle that because in the US, what you see is what you get, and this is perfectly okay to be upfront with people, right? And that may be true in
How'd that
New York.
go?
Well, in New York and Boston, it went well.
I was about to say I'm from Boston, so I really feel you. You know, like
Yeah,
I'm like, bring it to me. Yeah.
up in the Northeast, I had no issue with that, or very little issues. Now, I live in the southeast of the United States. Micah, you live in Texas, so I wouldn't call
Yeah,
that
yeah. I'm
southeast,
from
but
Oklahoma.
it's
Yeah,
still
so I
it's
see
south.
both.
So I learned quickly that being as direct as I thought I was able to be in the US did not serve me at all in the South. In fact, it hurt my business. So
And it's hard to generalize the whole country, isn't it?
exactly,
Even
exactly.
yeah.
So just like we don't want to um, generalize that all Spanish that is spoken around the world is the same kind of Spanish. We don't want to assume that one culture is a monolith. There are different aspects
Yeah.
of behaviors within one nation, one construct, or one culture. And the U.S. is a big country like many other huge population countries, whether it be China or India, Brazil, Indonesia. However, even smaller countries like my native Germany, we are quite diverse internally, right? So the same can be said of um, how much we are taught of other cultures, right? So I have
Mhm.
learned that over the years that when we Westerners, and I almost had to put Westerners in quotation marks because Westerner is such an arbitrary concept. Um, what's been your experience with countries like India or Southeast Asia, Micah?
Well, most of my experience, I will tell you, is mostly with Korea and Japan. I have some experience with Indians, but probably not as much as you. So if you want to jump into that, but I do want to make sure while I'm chatting here that we have enough time to answer these awesome questions
Yeah,
live.
Diana's question might be one that we may tackle, right?
Yes, absolutely. And there's one other that I'd love to. Do you
Go
want to
ahead.
do that now or
Yeah,
at
go
the end?
ahead. Go ahead. Let's tackle this right now.
Okay, so there's an anonymous attendee who said Americans are in Germany and they would love to speak their German. They speak German. You know, of course they have an accent, but
Hmm.
Germans hear that and they default to English.
Hmm.
I wanted to answer this because I cannot tell you how it happens everywhere. I
Yeah.
speak 3 languages fluently. Not like Christian speaks English, which is another level completely, but fluently. I mean, I can work in Spanish, I can work in French, and I can kind of work in Japanese. And so that's a high level. But it doesn't matter where I go in the world as a native English speaker, and I will always have an accent. It doesn't matter how much I work. I have an American mouth. And so in Japan, I would have to tell them, I do not want to speak English. I am here to improve my Japanese. Can we please stay in Japanese? People think, for the most part, they are helping you by switching to English when they hear you falter or when they hear you have an accent. And it's not meant to be offensive in my experience. It's not saying, you don't speak Japanese, let's switch. It's saying, I speak English better than you speak Japanese, so let's switch for your comfort. And I even had this happen in a meeting last week. It was an all Spanish speaking meeting, and I couldn't think of one word for 0.2 seconds. And the company CEO said, do you want to speak to English? I switched to English. I was like, I've already done 2.5 hours in Spanish. Why would I need to speak English all of a sudden, you know? So they're just trying to be kind, because you have to remember, the world has been learning English for decades, and most Americans have been learning German or another language for probably a shorter time, and
Right.
it's not meant to be offensive. Does that help, anonymous attendee? You have to tell them.
Yeah.
You want to stick to German, and why? And they will. I guarantee you they will. They're just trying to be nice.
And this is a great explanation. Thank you, Micah. And to add some fuel to that, anonymous attendee, I think Germans are overcompensating a little bit of a global minority or inferiority complex, because Germany after World War II has been rightfully so made a pariah on the global scale, and by showing off their whatever English skills they have at this point, they think they're earning points with you. So they think that by showcasing how well they're doing now in English, that is going to increase or fuel and accelerate the business dealings with you. It's never condescension, even though it may appear as such to you, right? But that's a great question.
There could be many reasons, right? And Lainey brings up a really good point. They also just want to practice their English. Is another reason why people switch it. And I think what Christian just said about Germany is actually very true of many countries. I get that feeling when I'm also speaking with a lot of Asian countries too. They're like, there's no reason for you to speak my language. I speak English, I speak English. And I'm like, I know you speak English. I want to speak language because we are in your country. Yeah.
Exactly. So let me address Ronald's question. Ronald Kim asked, what about the US West Coast, California or Washington State? Are they as indirect as the US Southeast? Well, I would say no. I would think that the West Coast is certainly less direct than the Northeast part of the United States. However, I think West Coasters are quite more direct than those in the Southeast. What's been your experience, Micah?
I would say yes. You know, I will say I have not spent a lot of time in the Southeast, in Georgia.
Well, let's say compared to Texas.
Okay, let's do Texas. Yes, I would say they're not as sweet with their answers if they don't agree. That's how I would say it. You know, they might say, yeah, I don't agree. Maybe they're laid back, but they're going to say they don't agree. Whereas in Texas, they might make it sound sweeter that they don't agree. Yes. You know, it's I always say the bless her heart.
No, but that's the biggest insult really you get in the South.
Yes, exactly. So in the West, they might say, oh, that was kind of dumb. In Texas, they might say, bless her heart.
Bless her heart, yeah. Oh.
Exactly. You get a blessing when you do something dumb in Texas, and maybe on the West Coast, they will say that wasn't very good at all. And then in New York, they might say, like, what a freaking idiot, you know?
Right. All right, so, then let me address Diana Villarreal's question. Yes. How do you address when impats, all leadership positions, use their native language amongst themselves and it creates unease with American coworkers, employees? Also, how to deal with behavioral differences that create angst. Oh, nice use of a German word right here. Diana, Micah, I'm going to let you take a first stab at that question.
Absolutely. So I see this happening all the time, and I have felt it all the time as a native only English speaker working with all these companies, because most of the companies we work with, they are from another country. and they've come here to set up a new office. And so, yes, I know how it makes me feel, and I know how it makes the others in the room feel, even though I know they're not probably talking about my hair or whatever it is. That's what it makes people feel like. Whereas they're probably just talking amongst themselves because they're like, I really want to tell you how I feel, and I don't have those words in English. So they just want to be able to express it. But I have had this conversation with a lot of companies. You can't do this. It really alienates
Yeah.
everyone in the room. What do you think, Christian?
I've had this happen over and over with a lot of European clients setting up operations here in North America, and German-speaking organizations, French-speaking organizations, Italian-speaking organizations, and my answer was typically the same. I understand that, especially your leadership positions who may be a bit older or more experienced in their field and their English
And
language
not as good as
skills,
English, possibly, too.
right?
That could be a
Their English skills may not be as developed yet. Well, go figure. That's why you call Micah. So they feel probably more comfortable discussing really business relevant issues in their native language, and they don't always realize that they're alienating the rest of the team. I would chalk this up also to a low cultural intelligence, because these executives haven't understood yet what this behavior causes, how that is hurting the team spirit. So my advice to companies, even though we don't dabble much with language training, my advice, say hello to my dog. My advice to our organizations is typically to tell them you have to figure out how you can default at least a certain portion of your internal interactions to the language in that market. And if that means you need to invest time and money into language training for some of your senior leadership positions, so be it. The investment for that is minimal compared to the damage you're potentially creating in your organization. So I think, and Diana's question is, how do we address this? So that really depends on the agency that you have within your organization, right? If you are part of human resources, if you're part of the mobility team in your company or learning and development, then I think it would behoove you to initiate at least that conversation. Whether you can actually make that change or not depends on how much strategic influence your department has in the company. However, I mean, I have the privilege and the benefit of dealing often with clients who give me FaceTime with their leadership. If they're not, they often participate in our training. So we address these topics. So at least they hear it from an outside source. But my general recommendation for anyone on this call or within your network, Diana, if you want to carry this further, is mandate that there is a common language in the organization. And one of the companies that we worked with is a big global automotive manufacturer who in the beginning insisted everybody learn their native language from the home office, and you actually couldn't make a career in that company unless, and this is still the case, people don't move up the food chain in that organization if they don't learn the language of the home market, which that's their prerogative, but they gradually shifted to making English the lingua franca in their organization, even for the leadership. So they recognized that the damage was bigger than the investment, and they learned a lesson there. Right. So I hope that answers your question, Diana.
Yeah, and I just wanted to tie this back to the language intelligence slide as well. This is an aspect of language intelligence, knowing that if you are speaking the language that no one else or few people in the room know, you are creating discomfort. I highly suggest these things must be spoken about. We had this type of a situation happen at a Mexican American company, and I think everyone hiding their feelings about it is just creating more poison between all of the relationships. And so bringing it up and talking about it all together and having the people say, it makes me feel like you're disapproving of what I've just suggested, when you turn to someone else and start speaking another language. Even if you're talking about getting your hair cut tomorrow, I'm imagining you are, disappointed about what I've just said. And so that just creates that resentment. And
Exactly.
so you've got to bring it out. Diana, I'd love to know what behavioral differences specifically, but again, working with Christian and bringing up all of these, cultural differences and talking through them. It's just like with any therapy session with couples or with anyone, you have to bring up what is bothering us, or how can you fix it, right?
Right. Right.
So I've put some notes together. I can't type and talk.
All
Okay.
right, so I'll continue the talking.
Yes,
So
there we
let
go. Okay.
let me let me redirect real quick to the slide that you're looking at right now. So I think the context under in which we wanted to present this to you is that please be aware that whatever you learn about one culture or one language, there's often a variation of that truth. So make sure that as you brush up on your cultural competence, on your cultural knowledge, that whatever is true in one part of the country, a separate truth, a different truth, maybe at play in a different part of that region or that country or within that culture. So that's why we said that translating one culture into another just by the foreign language skill will not set you up for success. By when we say translating, it's not just translating the language that you're using, it's translating this the design of your product or your service. It's a term that is often used, is well known in the language field, is localization. So great global marketers know what that means. We need to localize our products and our offerings. So just because something works in one culture doesn't mean it will work the same way in another culture. So please be aware that just by translating, you're only going half the path, right? You're not really addressing all the aspects of adjusting to the foreign market, right? So oftentimes this is expressed in how formal we are with each other, and what expectations we may have of being formal, right? And I see a comment here in the chat box. Brett is referring to slapdragons. So those of you who are familiar with a book called The Accidental Business Nomad by Kyle Hegarty, or if you read his blog, you may be familiar with the term slapdragon. And he lives in Singapore and has a marketing agency in Singapore. And one of his clients is actually was from Texas, and they offered I think a software product for the banking financing industry, and it worked very well in North America. And they thought, well, let's expand in the ever-growing Southeast Asian markets, and they sent him the marketing materials and said, hey, here it is, just use that. And he said, well, this isn't going to work here in Asia. And Texas said, well, just slap a few dragons on the marketing brochure. So that's where the term slap dragons come from. So if that's your approach to localization, then we're here to tell you you're in for a big surprise, and tissues are on us, because there's going to be a lot of weeping about this. So levels of formality. How formal are we with each other? I know that Micah, you have an example of working with clients from Japan, and we also have a comment here about Japanese culture in the Q&A. Well, what's been your experience around this?
I hope I can explain this very well, but what I would often see, which would cause more tension or more awkwardness, or what's going on here face, is the Japanese, they would translate what they would say in a business meeting in Japan to the equivalent in English, which was a very formal textbook. I call it a little awkward English that wouldn't even be used. It would maybe be used with the Queen if you ever met her, you know? And and so they couldn't connect. They were staying up here in this stratosphere and they couldn't connect. And so the Americans are saying things like, you know, let's wrap up the meeting. You know, they never heard the words wrap up, which is an everyday, it's not even informal, it's useful everyday language. And so I see that the culture tying into the language is being translated, and both people are kind of missing the mark both ways. You know, I wouldn't say let's maybe wrap up the meeting in Japanese. So we need to bend and meet.
And the way to bend is really where your cultural and language intelligence comes in, because Anonymous is asking, is there a process to achieve success in culture and language? Yes, there is. And it's not by the snap of a finger, it's not by the flip of a switch. It is a learning process. So I think you want to be patient with yourself, you want to forgive yourself, because you're continuously getting better, and so are your colleagues. Right. We promise that Micah has a few strategies that you can immediately apply in these situations. So Micah, I'm going to hand it off to you. Strategy number one, what is that?
Absolutely. This is so simple, and I can't tell you how many people don't do it. You know, I get complaints, I get pushback. It is crazy to me how much pushback I get for this. Turn the videos on all the time. If you have an international or even a multilingual company, I don't care if somebody is two doors down. If you are doing some kind of a call where you can't see each other's faces and someone's first language is not English, or wherever you are in the world, if you're working in Russian and you have some Americans working at the office, they have to see your face. There's so much being lost. One of the first things people use to understand is the movement of the mouth. That's one of the largest things that we focus on when we're using our non-native language. And so I hear this all the time. Oh, I don't want to be on video. And I said, I've seen you. I know what you look like. Turn the video on. And so a Mexican American company that I worked with last year, they went to a video only policy. And before I started working with them, this was a communication consulting gig. Before I started working with them, I asked everyone to grade the communication happening between the finance teams in the US and Mexico. And the average score was a 4. Really abominable. I mean, how is work even getting done? And it wasn't. That's why they called us in. Work was not getting done. And after we left them, one of the number one things that they said changed everything was the video. And everyone gave it an 8 or above.
And I think
Just from
if
seeing each other.
if there's a policy about it, I think it gives people less excuses. I know there's quite a few cultures who struggle with this, who don't want to show their face, or they feel that maybe their bandwidth doesn't allow the
That's
video to come
true.
through, or maybe not right now, since a lot of us are still in the work from home mode, that they feel a little bit compromised by the surroundings in which they are in. I mean, look at me. I'm not in my office right now because circumstances prevent me from being in my office. But my culture allows me to do that. I don't have any qualms about this. I know that some cultures struggle with this. However, if it is a corporate policy that requires you to do that, then it gives them permission to do so, and then they will be more okay, or likely to be more okay with that. So great first strategy. Strategy number 2. Tell us about it, Micah.
Absolutely. And Brett just jumped the slides. He knew what we were going to. So this is, again, a part of that language intelligence. If you know that people on your team are working in their second language, and the goal is for everyone to understand what you're saying so that we can get the job done, you have to think like an English teacher. What will they understand? And that's a part of that language intelligence. You don't need to speak 5 different languages or even 1 different language than your native language, but you need to understand what non-native speakers will understand. And so one of the top things is you can't control everyone on the conference call, but you can appoint someone to paraphrase what is being said in a saved chat that someone else can then read later. Because do you know how much feedback you're missing? Someone's trying to keep up. Someone's not quite sure what is being said, so they're probably hesitant to respond. You're paying this person for their feedback and their talent. If they don't understand what's going on in the meeting, they can't give their brilliant ideas to you.
And especially if the audience is from a culture that is a little bit more deferring to hierarchies, they
Yes.
don't feel like they have permission to ask for clarification, right? So native
So true.
speakers of English often fall into that trap of speaking jargon and industry blah blah, and you're sending your audience into a loop that they can close. They still try to process the information you shared with them in verbiage that they cannot comprehend. And while their brain tries to figure out what could this possibly mean, they're already missing the next 3 bullet points you told them. So I think this is a very, very important strategy right here.
And right before you switch the slides, Brett brought up a great thing. The person
Yeah.
who's doing the paraphrasing or the summarizing needs to be doing the translating as well. It's not just keep writing down the hard idioms and the jargon. Make sure
Exactly.
that you're translating. If someone
Exactly.
says, let's wrap up at 5, they need to write, we're ending the meeting at 5. If
Yeah.
someone says, let's not go down a rabbit hole, is let's not continue with this strategy. I don't think it's going anywhere. You've got to be quick, and it is hard. So that person who is paraphrasing and summarizing does need to get used to it as well and kind of know what that means. Okay, continue.
Right, exactly. So strategy number 3, bending. Tell us about bending, Micah.
So understanding what the communication expectations, like Christian just said, you know, if you go into a meeting with a new possible merger and everyone is from Japan and you're expecting everyone to jump out with all of these ideas, and the big boss is there with about 20, you know, people that's under him, you're not going to get a lot of feedback and ideas, are you? And so you have to know what to expect so that you are not shocked. Oh, they weren't interested in us at all. No, maybe that's not it. It's not their turn to talk. It's the first meeting. Maybe that happens in the 3rd meeting. Maybe it happens at dinner or at the drinks. So you need to know what to expect, because the Mexican American company, the Mexicans were trying to say, how's your family? How's your weekend? Where'd you guys go? And the Texans were, hey, where's report number, where's invoice number 23? And the Mexicans like, whoa, we didn't chit chat. You have to know what to expect.
Lovely. I love these examples. Thank you. And finally, strategy number 4, one of my favorite ones, keep it simple. Well, how
Yes,
simple
we
can we
already
keep
talked
it?
about it. Yeah.
That we basically touched upon this. So keep your phrases in check. Keep your, especially if you're speaking American English, keep your sports jargons in check. Even Micah, who lives in the city of the Cowboys, who some would call the
Ew, what?
American football team, the what?
My friend's
So
probably the worst American ever.
well, see, even Micah was struggling to come up with a football phrase that would have been applicable a half an hour ago. So
Here we go.
imagine how many of your foreign counterparts have no idea what you're talking about with all these
Yeah.
American sports idioms. All right, so keep that in check.
Yeah.
That is strategy number 4. We're going to wrap this up here because we're getting close to the finish line. I think we answered all your questions here. I just want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us. So multilingual workplace solutions, this is where you go to
Language
fluencycorp.com.
training, communication, consultations to transform the way multilingual workplaces talk to each other.
Lovely. And if cultural competency is where you want to go, hang on, gotta jump this slide here real quick. You go to theculturemastery.com, cultural coaching, training, mentoring, consulting, all of that. And to make matters a bit nicer for you to give you a little bit of a takeaway. Here's our ebook, a dozen tips for efficient communication across cultures. Use that link here, bit.ly/TCM ebook. I will send it to you. I'll send you the link in the follow-up email that you'll receive from us as well. So you can grab that free copy for you and spread it in your organization as much as you want to. It's free for all. Go take it. Free stuff. Gift from us to you. And here's how you stay in touch with us. So Micah's got an email and a phone number, as do I. We look like this in real life, even though it's work from home. So stay in touch with us. Wait a minute. Your hair is exactly the same as in that picture.
I'm gonna say, I said, this is what happens when I'm inside for 4 months. I'm like, let's see what happens when we put bleach on brown hair.
Okay, I will use a better picture or a different picture. This picture is awesome. And either way, so here's how you get in touch with us. Use the numbers. These are our direct lines. So use them. Do not misuse them. All right. But we would love to stay in touch with you. Thank you, everybody, for being on here today. Micah, thank you for being awesome, as always.
That was stellar week.
And you'll get a link to the recording in a little bit. Ciao for now, everybody.